Everyone has it, but let's be honest, who really knows what the science behind our hair is? It's something so simple, yet nobody seems to know much about it. Like why some people have curly hair and some don't, or why her hair changed from curly to straight and his from straight to curly. These questions lead me into my topic. Today I will be informing you about hair, more specifically curly hair, and the genetics behind it, the biology of it, and how it can change as we age. As mentioned above, we all have basic knowledge of what curly hair looks like, but the biology of it, despite being incredibly interesting, is actually very sparsely known. We'll get back to that in a few minutes, but first, I'm sure you're wondering what makes me any more qualified than you to really dive into what curly hair is. Well, as I'm sure you can see, I have curly hair. But it wasn't always like this. All the way up until I was 10 years old, my hair was pretty much pinned straight, and then it decided to slowly but surely turn into this. Unfortunately for me, I didn't have anybody to show me how to properly take care of my hair, but luckily for you, this forced me to do all the research to figure out what the heck was going on with my hair on my own. Now, I obviously didn't look deeply into the science of it back then, but it gave me the curiosity to do just that several years later. So what even makes curly hair different from straight hair? As defined on vocabulary.com, in order for something to be curly, it must be wavy, coiled, or spiral shaped. But this brings up the question of what makes the hair actually grow in these different shapes. A single strand of hair has two parts, the shaft and the follicle. In the study of the what, why, and how of curly hair, conducted by Elizabeth Coletta, we molecularly analyze the hair, and we can see that non-curly hair emerges from collinear follicles that are embedded at approximately right angles with the scalp. Basically, this is telling us that straight hair grows directly out of the scalp with an essentially perfect shaped and symmetrical follicle, causing the hair to fall straight once it's long enough to be visible. From the same study, it can be seen that curly hair, on the other hand, comes from fibers emerging angularly with the scalp and are generated by curved follicles. This image demonstrates the differences in these angles and shows that the flatter the angle that the hair exits the head, the curlier the hair will be once it is visible and out of the scalp. In addition to this, the bulb of the curly fibers also exhibit an asymmetry in shape, creating an oval rather than a perfect circle. The flatter the oval is, the curlier the hair that is produced will be. A strand of hair can be thought of as very much like a curling ribbon, and we can think of them also as very similar in shape. The ribbon starts out straight, but when you take a pair of scissors and flatten one side of the ribbon curls, similarly to how the angle of the follicle in relation to the scalp causes the hair to curl. In this image, we can see that in addition to the angle of the hair growth, the shape of the hair shaft also has a large impact on what the hair shape will be, but the shape of the shaft is largely caused by the angle of the follicle. This is the basic science of what causes the hair to be in the shape that it is. These factors, however, are a result of the genetics that any individual has. The next point of interest when discussing curly hair is the genetics of it. This includes and is highly dependent on the ancestry, but is ultimately determined by the genes that you get from your parents. Research conducted and documented by Gillian E. Westgate in the Biology and Genetics of Curly Hair states that there is a strong correlation between your ethnicity and the type of hair that you'll have. But it is possible to have a different hair type than the stereotyped kind, whatever that hair type may be. Determining hair type using ethnicity may be fairly accurate, but the best way to tell what the hair type will be is by looking at the genotype of it, since there are always exceptions. To better understand this concept, let's look at a Punnett square. With two opposing gene-carrying parents, in this example, the mother has two curly hair genes and the father has two straight hair genes. All offspring of these particular parents will have a gene of each just because of how genes work. As explained in curly hair, genetics and heredity, it would be assumed that because the curly hair gene is considered the dominant trait, that all offspring would also have curly hair, but this is not the case since the curly hair gene has incomplete dominance, meaning that the offspring will have hair that is a mix of the two hair types, or wavy hair. The hair type of the offspring will be a blend of both parents, but it will look more like the curly hair of the mother, just in a sense diluted with the gene from the father. Like most other traits, what type of hair you're going to have is determined long before you were born, as WebMD describes that by week 22, a developing fetus has all of its hair follicles already formed. These hair follicles are already implanted with the hair that the baby will be born with. However, the hair that the baby is born with will often change once the child begins to age, and even can change again later on. It is fairly common for the hair of children to change when they are 3 to 18 months old, but when the fine hair that they are born with is replaced with the more permanent hair. According to Mistella.com, hair will likely begin to appear around the 6-month mark, and this will be the hair that they will have throughout the entirety of their childhood. This hair is commonly the same texture and shape as the hair that the child will have for the rest of their lives, but in some adolescents, their hair has been shown to change again with the increase in hormones. Science World says that this change in hair shape is caused by the increase in one hormone in particular, androgens. These are male sex hormones, but during puberty, both genders experience an increase in androgens. This increase in females can change the shape of the hair follicle from round to flat, causing the hair to change from straight to curly. Hormonal changes during pregnancy have also been shown to change the shape of the hair. Another hormonal change includes hair that grows back in a different, curlier shape after chemotherapy. In this instance, though, the hair does return back to normal after a period of time. But hormonal causes are not the case for everyone. There have been instances where adults experience changes in the shape of their hair with no sign of hormonal changes. Dr. Val Randall, an endocrinologist from the University of Bradford in England, says change is possible because hair is always replacing itself. If the new follicles grow back a different shape, then your new hair will be a new shape too. This change in the shape of the follicle can also cause the shape of the hair to go from curly to straight. However, most of the time, when curly hair gets straighter, the reason for it is that the hair is just longer and is being weighed down, or it has suffered extreme heat and chemical damage. In conclusion, I gave you some basic information regarding curly hair. We went over the basic structure of the hair that can cause it to be curly, how curly hair is passed down from generation to generation, and why the hair can change from one shape to another. Despite hair being a frequently overlooked part of our appearance, the science explaining what makes our hair the way it is a particularly complicated thing to understand. So much so that scientists are still unsure of how different factors impact the structure of the hair. Research is still being done to fully understand the hair every day, and as ideas of being able to change your own hair by will become closer to reality, knowing everything there is to know about hair becomes even more important. This small lesson on hair gives you a tiny glimpse into the hair world and brings you one step closer to possibly being able to pick what your hair looks like in the future.